Hey, what's up guys? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is. Hope you're having a great day and welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the actual timeline of the entire escrow process. It was so interesting. A lot of you agents or even sellers or buyers, if you're buying or selling your own home, don't really understand the escrow process and how things come together. And there's no real guide. It's very, very interesting to see. A lot of us have gone to real estate school and then we graduate 6 weeks later and we're like, what the heck? I have no idea what to do here. We go to a contract writing class in some states and you pop out and you don't even know how to write a contract most times. And so they don't give you this kind of stuff. So it's very important that I go through this with you. So please bear with me for about the next 10 minutes as we kind of review this thing. We'll go through the seller side first, then we'll talk about the buyer side and how these things interrelate and how to make this a very, very smooth and hopefully successful process. So let's start on the buyer side here. Guys, day one, you're going to send out the property disclosure statement. It's called different things in different states. In Arizona, it's just called SPUDs, and Colorado is just a seller's property disclosure, and you're going to send that stuff out. Be very, very candid on those things, by the way. So I'm a big proponent, a big advocate of disclosing everything. And if you're an agent that recognizes something that's not right and it's not in the seller disclosure statement, please add it in or make the buyer aware of any kind of defects. That is your responsibility, not only contractually, but also morally. Make sure that we're disclosing everything that we know about the property. Good and bad, right? So we need to understand that. I want you to send a claims history report. In previous years, they've been called clue reports. It's just a claims history for usually about the last 5 years to make sure that the new buyer can get insurance on that property. We'll talk about that on the other side too. You're going to be setting up the inspection. And so please, if you're a seller's agent, give the buyer's agent a little bit of room. I wouldn't personally attend that inspection if I'm a listing agent or if I'm a seller. I wouldn't actually go there or let them do that in confidence and behind closed doors. And don't record that if you've got interior cameras and stuff like that. Make sure to turn it off and give them a little bit of privacy and make sure that is a comfortable and inviting environment to do that inspection. So right after that, that's usually day one. You're going to kind of handle a lot of this stuff. You might set the inspection in the next couple of days, but you're going to go through the inspection period. In Arizona, it's standardized. It's 10 days. I'm a licensed broker in multiple states. In Colorado and Florida, it's all negotiable. You can negotiate the amount of days really in any state, but let's just call it the inspection period for these purposes here. What I really need you to do as an agent is review the title report. It's going to tell you a couple different things. Number one, if there's any past due HOA dues that have shown up as a lien, if there's any tax liens, if there's anything going on there that would prohibit the transfer of title. You got to check and make sure that the equity is there, guys, because I've had deals come to the closing table and the seller didn't realize they had to bring a check in. Well, they didn't have the cash to sell that house. And guess what? As real estate agents, we usually take a commissionectomy at that point and you're discounting your rate because we didn't do that ahead of time. We didn't check to make sure that we have enough equity in the property to get you paid and also get the buyer's agent paid and make sure that all the other liens are taken care of. And so be very, very aware of that. The other thing you're going to do is review the request for repairs. It's called different things in different states. In Arizona, it's called a BINSR. But basically what's going to happen is the buyer's agent and the buyer are going to submit a request to the seller asking for the repair of some of the inspection items, right? And so I want you to review that and really go through there and see and start that negotiation process. That's going to happen in the inspection period. Once you negotiate that, you're going to kind of move on. The second thing is going to happen. You're going to confirm that the repairs are done. Guys, as listing agents, please go back into the home and make sure that the repairs were how do you say this politely, done properly, because we've had many, many cases where, especially in Arizona, it just says in a workmanlike manner. Well, what is that? That's very subject to interpretation. It's very subjective. And so we really want to make sure that the seller has completed the repairs successfully and with good quality. The seller needs to provide receipts. They really do. And so, make sure that you're either scanning those in and emailing them out, or what I usually do is leave them on the counter. I leave them on the counter that when they do the final walkthrough on the buyer side, which is down here, when they do the final walkthrough with the buyers, that you can have evidence of the receipts of roof repairs or plumbing parts or whatever the situation is that you need to get repaired. Make sure they're all readily available. And the other thing I want you to do as a seller's agent, about 3 days before closing, please make sure that the loan documents are at title. A lot of times, loan companies will actually wait until like the day of closing to send documents. Then what happens is, I used to own a title company. What happens is the escrow officer starts to get very, very nervous. They're calling the lender, they're calling the closing department. The wire doesn't show up on time. Guess what? If you're in a table funding state, like Colorado is, or Florida, or some of the other states, it may not fund at the table. And so you have to understand the wire cutoff is at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If the wire doesn't show up by 2, nobody's getting keys that day. And so you have to make sure that the documents are there. There's a couple things that happen behind the scenes that you're not aware of. When you sign those documents as a seller and a buyer, all of those documents go back to the mortgage company. The mortgage company then does a QC and a checklist to make sure all the documents are signed and initialed correctly, that everything's the way it should be. Then they release for record. And so it takes a little bit of time. They scan the documents, they email them. Someone's got to be waiting there. Hopefully they don't have any files in front of yours, but they probably do. And then it takes some time to do that. So be very, very aware that you need to have this confirmation of docs of title probably about 3 days before the actual close of escrow. Is going to help you substantially. Learning from experience, please. Be prepared for that final walkthrough. Like I said, a couple days before closing, depends on the state. As a listing agent and as a buyer's agent, I like to push that to like the day of escrow or the day before escrow, just to make sure that all the repairs are done. I'm calling to make, the listing agent to make sure that the repairs are completed on their end. They're going to confirm. I need you to review that settlement statement, before you go to closing. I've seen so many times that we've missed concessions. I forgot to send an addendum. That happens a lot. Like if you go through the negotiation process for the inspections and all of a sudden the buyer's asking for a $5,000 concession and then it doesn't show up in the settlement statement because I forgot to send in the addendum changing that, that's my fault, right? And so avoid those problems by reviewing the settlement statement. Make sure your commission is in there too. That always helps. Go to the closing. For sellers, it's a very quick process. It's like 8 documents. Literally, they're going to probably notarize the deed. They're going to look at the final settlement statement. They're going to sign a couple other docs, maybe some title and escrow instructions depending on your state. And they're out of there in probably about 10 minutes. But guess what? That is a very rewarding time. And that's a great time to ask for referrals and stuff like that. And ask for some feedback, some honest feedback. And then when you're done, after closing and it records and everybody gets keys, make sure to take out the lockbox. In signage, I got a call. This is a true story. I had a listing in Paradise Valley. I forgot to take the signs down, and the buyer's agent was calling me and be like, hey, just a reminder to take the sign down. And it was there for embarrassingly like 3 weeks. And so I'll be sure to do that. And I've left lock boxes on houses, and I'll do an inventory. I'm like, where the heck is that lockbox at? Realizing that a year ago, I had closed on a property. That is a true story. I left a lockbox on a property for over a year, and I had to go get it. So do that. Make sure you close it in the MLS. A lot of times the MLS doesn't update as far as the closing date. If you did change that date from the time that you originally entered it into the MLS, it won't close automatically. So go back and just manually make sure that is done. Always is a good favor to the buyer's agent. And be sure to enter the seller's new contact information, because they probably moved, into your CRM. So you can do some drip campaigns, you can do some follow-up, asking for that repeat and that referral business. Very, very important that you have systems in place for that. And so use a CRM if you're not already. Let's walk over to the buyer side here real quick and talk about that process, because it is a little bit different than it is on the seller side. And so as a buyer or a buyer's agent, you're going to open up escrow. Day number 1, very important that you do that. You're going to compile an email, and you're going to CC, you're going to not BCC, but actually CC everybody. That includes title and mortgage with not only the contract, but the contact information for the buyers. It's very important that you do that. And then you want to stick in the seller's agent information probably, and then you want to stick in the mortgage contact in there as well. So title contact information, mortgage loan officer or processor contact information, buyer information, and obviously your information as well. And then make sure that the buyers are depositing the earnest money. You don't want to get a cure notice saying that, hey, look, we don't have earnest money, we're going to cancel that contract. That always gives me massive anxiety. So avoid that by really giving your buyers a heads up to go ahead and deposit that earnest money. They can usually wire it in. Personal checks are usually fine in most states, or certified or money order, not cash, by the way. And so once you make it into that inspection period, which really could be, depending on your state, day 1 could be part of that inspection period. You want to schedule that inspection. And I recommend getting many inspections. So that would include, customize a property inspection, obviously general property inspection, but bigger than that, depending on what area of the country that you live in, you want to do some kind of environmental stuff, whether that be sewers, roof inspections, HVAC inspections, asbestos, radon, lead-based paint. And so there are many specialized inspectors that you're going to want to actually retain and make sure that you're doing a proper full inspection on that property. When you get that inspection back, I need you guys to review it and really negotiate and make sure of full disclosure, all the problems are out there, and reference the SPUDs, reference the seller's property disclosure statements, and make sure they kind of align. Make sure that we didn't miss anything, none of the inspectors missed something. I also want you to review, we talked about that, the SPUDs, the clue report, claims history report. If there have been claims, and we've seen big claims, flood claims are big ones, fire damage is another big one that we see a lot. Any kind of personal property damage, we've seen cars run through houses and cause massive damage, and then the structure has been repaired and it wasn't disclosed on the seller property disclosure statement. So you have to be very, very aware that you're going to find information on the claims history report. You got to order that stuff. By the way, if you're on the seller side, you order that. You order the SPUDs, or I'm sorry, the clue report. So you're going to go back through and ask the seller who the property insurance agent is, and you're going to get that contact information, and you go ahead and order that claims history report for the seller, and hopefully you can do it before you even go to list, go to market, and then you can upload that into the MLS depending on your system. So I also want you to review any kind of condo docs or CC&Rs. We've had many issues where it becomes non-warrantable, or something happens in the CC&Rs where you can't park RVs or have RV gates, or can't park in front of the home. We've seen those. Big thing for condos, no short-term rentals. You got to go through the CC&Rs and understand what all the bylaws are and make sure that there's no conflicts there. I also want you, I've made mistakes, check the flood zone. I personally went and bought a house that was in a flood zone. I looked at the seller's property disclosure statement, it wasn't on there. And I bought the house, and it turns out I couldn't sell it because it required a massive amount of flood insurance. I paid cash for the property, and I wasn't required to get flood insurance. If you pay cash for property, you don't have to do that, but the mortgage company will absolutely require that you get flood insurance on the property. Always a good idea to check the flood zone. And then also prepare the request for repairs. It's called different things in different states. In Arizona, it's called a BINSR, and so you can prepare that BINSR and send it over to the seller's agent and start that negotiation process. Once you get the okay to move forward, we've negotiated all the repairs, go ahead and call the mortgage company, call the loan officer, call the loan processor and say, hey, look, we are good to go to order that appraisal. Don't do it until after the inspection has been completed and you've already negotiated terms on what repairs that you're going to have done to the property. So important, you're going to save your client. Somebody out there is going to save a lot of money. So please be very aware. And I have made all of these mistakes, by the way. And so you're talking to somebody that has written many checks for stupid things. Before closing, obviously do a final walkthrough and make sure, like we had talked about before, the seller has completed all the repairs. Ask your inspector to come back and re-inspect. Most good inspectors, most good home inspectors will come out and do at no charge a re-inspection of all the repairs done to the property to make sure, and it relieves you, the agent, of any liability. And so please, please do that. And then also, you should be doing the same thing. Confirm the loan docs are at escrow, and then go back through and review that final settlement statement. I don't know why I have final walk here twice, bear with me. Go to the closing. Look, if you're representing a buyer, it's a very, very nervous time for the buyer. It's always comforting to have somebody that they know at title. COVID, this is July of 2020, makes things a little bit more interesting. I couldn't go to any of the closings I've had in the last 6 months because of COVID, but be aware that you should be obviously reviewing the settlement statement, maybe calling the buyer and saying, hey, look, I looked at the loan docs, I went ahead and I looked at the settlement statement, everything looks good, go ahead and sign it the way it is. If you have any questions, I'll block out time for you during that time of closing. Call me, text me, whatever you gotta do, and we'll address those as they come up. Bring a gift. Always a good time to bring a gift is at closing, or at least when you hand off those keys. And then last but not least, update your CRM. And so you wanna update that CRM with the new contact information so that you can put that client on another drip campaign, and again, ask for repeat and referral business. So what I've done is I've actually compiled this list into a very nice PDF, and I will put a link in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. Go ahead and click on that link for the description, and you can download that for free. And you'll see all the stuff here, and it makes a lot more sense chronologically. So, hey, look, I've hoped to help you out a little bit. Stay tuned. Please like and subscribe. It means a lot to me, and it does help me with the YouTube algorithm. And I hope to see you guys very, very soon. See you soon. Take care.